Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Thursday, January 8th, which makes this the news and events for Wednesday, January 7th, day 1413. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv. I'm sorry, I got distracted for a second because I just remembered today is my grandmother's birthday. And let's see, Grandma would be, if she were still alive, she would be 117 today. So I want to say to Agnes Monahan, happy birthday. She'd be 117 today if she were still alive. Okay, so the peeps are coming in. How's everybody? Van is the first one in tonight. Holy shit. On time. Amazing. Hey, Nightshade. Hey, Daryl Roberts. Hey, Debbie. How you guys doing? Hey, Seawolf. Hey, Raven. Hey, Bjorn. Evening, Flip. How you doing, buddy? How's your new year going? Hey, Carl. Hey, Steve McStevens. Green Eyes. Oh, Gypsy Girl. Hey, how you doing? T-Bone. Truth Hurts. Roy Daniels is here. Hey, Super User. Hey, Scotty. Hey, Dawn Patrols. My man. Hey, George. Buonasera, Vittoria. Richard Prexis is here. Hey, Scully. Hey, Den. Hey, Akron. Andrea. Hey, Ted. How you doing, Ted? Guten Morgen, Germany. Hey, Jan. Eli, Nicola Jones. Hey, Paul. Good day, mate. Glider Kev. Hey, Sarah Bradshaw. James Hazard. Hey, Clive Sutton. The Kid. Hey, Guard. Hey, Disco Sounds. Guard and the Kid, I saw your messages just before the live, so I didn't have a chance to look at them, but I will. Hey, Dave. How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Pingu. Chrissy Locks. So the peeps are coming in. So it is a hell of a day, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if you guys have all been following the events of the day. Hey, Colin. The events of the day, but it is an extraordinary day. Today is a day for the history books, and we are going to talk about it. And I am so glad that you are here for this today. Hey, Anthony, Tommy Tom. Yep, Polka Paul, I saw that tragic, inevitable act of violence committed today by one of Trump's jackbooted ICE thugs who have decided that they can just trample on due process and murder Americans in the street. But this is a Ukrainian-focused channel, and we are going to keep the focus on Ukraine. Ukraine and Russia, because, of course, Russia is the prime mover in this war. It most certainly was a murder. Whoever that was does not belong here. You don't belong here. You should go. It was most certainly a murder. Anybody who watched that video knows that it was a murder. There was no self-defense involved. It was a murder of a woman. These men who are so intimidated and afraid of women. Anyway. Now look, this channel is Ukraine focused. And that is where we're going to focus. But before we do, I want to talk about Russia. And I want to talk about something that you may not have seen in the news. I don't even know that the news is covering it. My source on this is a Ukrainian Telegram channel. Russia has closed its embassy in Israel and evacuated its staff. 3 IL-76s, those big Russian cargo planes, like our C-130s, have taken as many Russians out of Israel today as they could shove into those planes. All the diplomatic staff and their families have been evacuated from Israel. Now, we don't know why that is, right? Sorry. Peanuts. I made fudge today. So, we don't know why. But why do you think? This comes less than 24 hours after the president of Iran said the words, "We are now in total war with the EU, the US, and Israel." And look, the Iranians are part of this whole macho man, strong man culture that I despise so much. The same culture that led to the murder of that woman in Minneapolis, or in Minnesota, right? In Minnesota, was it Minneapolis or outside of Minneapolis? Regardless, the same culture, right? I'm the man. I'm in charge. You do what I say, or I'll kill you. You know, it's an interesting thing. You can go to any forager culture. That is to say, what we used to call hunter-gatherers, right? Prehistoric kind of cultures. And if you survey the women, if you survey the men, do you know what the number one fear is? The number one fear in these forager cultures, these primitive, if primitive is a bad word to use, early evolutionary human cultures, the number one fear of the men is being laughed at by women. That's their number one fear. Not being eaten by lions, not being thrown off a cliff, not being murdered by their fellows. It's being laughed at by women. That's their number one fear. If you survey the women in those cultures, their number one fear is being murdered by the men. Now that speaks to our primate ancestry. And that's on full display, boy, with the jackbooted thugs in Minneapolis and with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They are the worst, most violent, rapacious, evil sons of bitches that ever lived. And if you ask me, if I were to take a guess at just why the Russians are evacuating everybody from Israel, it's likely that it's because Iran is about to retaliate. And retaliate in a way that is potentially very dangerous. Now, I don't know that to be true. The Russians do things for all kinds of reasons, but that is likely the case. Polka Paul, you get one stupid question that I'll take seriously. But come on. You don't think anthropologists go up the Amazon and talk to uncontacted tribes? You don't think that anthropologists go up into the mountains of Papua New Guinea and talk to people that 2 generations ago were eating each other? Give me a break. Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. D-Murph Resistance feels sorry for our American brothers and sisters. Pal, I appreciate the sentiment. I do. And I appreciate the sympathy. I don't feel sorry for my American brothers and sisters because they have chosen this. We live in a free democracy, and rather than choose the right thing, the harder thing to do, they are subsumed by their animal instincts. All right, Paul, you can go. You're not welcome here. It's just that simple. Okay. We have chosen this. It is a crime and a sin. It is an abandonment of everything that we are supposed to hold dear, that we are supposed to hold sacred as Americans. To see Americans debate whether or not due process of law is a thing that we should be worried about is insane. It's insane. So I wanted to start with the Russian thing because I don't think it's being reported. Tell me if I'm wrong. Has anybody else heard about the Russians doing this? But they have they have shuttered the embassy and evacuated as many Russians as they can from Israel. And of course, the concern that we all have is that an attack from Iran is coming and that it will be a significant attack. Right, Colin, it's a slippery slope. So I'm glad to see so many people saying that they have not heard that, because I do think that it's my job to bring important news that is not being covered to you. And on that very topic, I can tell you if this were a regular like network news program, you know what we'd talk about first, right? We'd be talking about the Paris meeting, the coalition of the willing meeting. We'd be going through the points of the plan and all of the agreements that have been made and talking about what the future looks like of the peace negotiations. We're not going to talk about any of that. Not because it's not important that the Europeans are supporting Ukraine so much. That is important. And that's a good thing. But the details of this plan are meaningless. They are meaningless in the face of Russia's maximalist demands, of an unreasonable genocidal lunatic in the Kremlin whose back is increasingly against the wall and will never agree to anything that's come out of Paris. It's not going to happen. And so the whole notion of spending our time dissecting all of the details of the Paris agreements is pointless. It's absolutely a pointless waste of time. So again, I think that we should all be grateful that with America sidelined as an ally and our federal system of government subverted by this wannabe dictator, this orange turd, this Fanta Führer, we're in trouble. The United States is in trouble, and it is a trouble of our own making. And so we deserve very little sympathy, but we do appreciate the support and the distinction that people make between America and Americans and the Trump administration, the Trump regime. Let's call it what it is. It is a corrupt, criminal gang of goblins and ghouls who have no interest in America. And God forbid that Trump, now emboldened by his success with Maduro, God forbid that he take action against Greenland. Because if he does, as my friend Karen and I were talking about a little bit earlier tonight, if he does, it will mean the end of NATO. If he attacks another NATO country, it will be the end of NATO. And, then it will be World War III, and it'll be Europe and Canada against the United States and Russia. And unlike the first two world wars, it will be with America on the wrong side and Germany in the hero's seat, which will be nice for them for a change. Somebody asked the question, just to touch on this real quick, because somebody did ask the question, isn't the Ayatollah's plate full right now with his own internal problems? Yes, it is. Well, that's true of Donald Trump and the Epstein files as well. What do they both need? They both need a good war to distract from their own failures. And that's what worries me about this evacuation of the Russians from Israel. Distraction. Distraction. At the cost of who knows how many lives. Now, the big news today, in my opinion, aside from the Russian evacuation of Israel, the big news today are the tankers, the Sophia and the Bella 1. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. It's a big deal because these are Russian Shadow Fleet tankers, right? There's a lot of talk about how they were carrying sanctioned Iranian oil, and people are talking about them being Iranian tankers. They are not. They are Russian Shadow Fleet tankers. The tanker, the Bella 1, was approaching Venezuela when it encountered the U.S. Armada, and suddenly it did a U-turn and ran away. Now, you know why you never run away from a lion or a bear or any kind of predator? Is because when you run away, you immediately become prey. And the U.S. Coast Guard looked at this ship that suddenly ran away and said, well, gosh, that's awful suspicious. Maybe we should go after them. And they did. And for nearly a week, they followed that ship across the Atlantic Ocean. Now that ship, one of the things that's coming out of this is the exposure of the whole scam of the Shadow Fleet. Because in mid-sail back to Murmansk, the ship reflagged and renamed itself. I mean, it's sailing under, I think it was a flag of Ghana. So that's supposed to mean the ship is Guyanese, right? No. The Guyanese flag comes down, the Russian flag goes up, and it's revealed to be a Russian ship. The crew then goes on to paint a giant Russian flag on the side, as if that's going to stop the United States. That's not going to stop us. It renames the ship as if that somehow disguises it, right? So now it's called the Marinera. So they renamed the ship, they reflagged the ship in mid-sail in the middle of the Atlantic, which means that none of these ships' flags, none of their names mean shit. They are assets of the Russian Federation designed to circumvent sanctions on Russian oil and transport that oil to ports of call where they'll take it, right? They'll take it for the deep discounts that they are getting because it is sanctioned oil. Now, seafood marinara. Now, this ship calls Russia They call, right? They phone home and they say, we need help out here. The Coast Guard is pursuing us. We're headed back to port as fast as we can get there. We've turned off our transponders so we can't be tracked, but we might need some help out here. Russia deploys a submarine to go and escort this vessel. Now, the vessel's riding high in the water, so it's not full of oil. What could possibly be on this vessel that the Russians would deploy a nuclear-powered submarine to protect it and escort it back to Murmansk? The ship was coming from Iran. Iran makes missiles. We get hit with drones. They make missiles and drones, and we get hit with Iranian drones all the time here in Kyiv. We don't know. Now, it's very important that we do not know what is on that ship. What is likely, if there's anything on it, because maybe it's just empty, right? We don't know yet. We don't know yet. With Trump in charge, we may never know. Maybe it's just empty, but that doesn't seem likely. Because if it were truly empty, if it were just an empty tanker headed to Venezuela to fill up with 1 million barrels of heavy sour crude, why would it run? Couldn't be empty, right? Maybe Vittoria, but maybe not. We don't know. Hey, Refurb. Most likely it's filled with weapons, right? Maybe Iranian weapons, maybe Russian weapons, maybe S-300, S-400 air defense systems. So hopefully we will find out soon what exactly the Russians were trying to hide on that ship. You know, people have said all kinds of things. They've said gold, they've said drugs. Who knows? Spies, spy equipment. Now, so many Russian ships are outfitted with spy equipment that's like de rigueur for the Russians. So we'll see. We'll see. The most important thing here is that the U.S., in conjunction with its UK partners, intercepted the ship before the Russian submarine could get to it. And they boarded that ship. Is it possible to start a war because of this? That's a possibility. Because this could be the USA is playing with fire. Get the fuck out of here. The USA is playing with fire. It's Russia doing this shit. Russia is the provocateur. Russia poured 250,000 troops over the border of a peaceful neighbor and have been committing a genocidal war of aggression against the Ukrainian people for 4 years. Everywhere in the world, the Russians are the agents of chaos. They are the ones committing hybrid acts of warfare against the West every single day. Cyber attacks, trucks burned in Germany, ammo dumps in Czechia destroyed, blown up, an IKEA in Poland burned. Give me a fucking break. We're not talking about Israel here. Don't distract us. The subject here is Russia and Ukraine. And because of the events in Venezuela. Because according to Mikhail Kazanov, and Mikhail Kazanov is a name you might recognize. He's a former prime minister of Russia. Former prime minister to Putin, who is now a Russian in exile, actively opposed to the Putin regime. And according to Mr. Kazanov, former Russian PM, killing the oil trade with Venezuela reduces Russia's war budget by 30%. By 30%. That's huge. Huge. Think about how the Russian budget is suffering already as the price of oil plummets around the world. Think of how the Russian budget is suffering as its exports fail. Look at Turkey, a big friend of Russia, right? Turkey's been buying 400,000 barrels of Russian oil a day through this war. The numbers for December are half that. Half. The Indians in August were buying 2.5 million barrels of oil a day from the Russians. Today they're buying 600,000. The money is drying up so fast, and Russia can't replace it. It is thought now that the Russians have at least 130 million barrels of oil stored on ships that are circling the ocean and have nowhere to go with it. Now, the Bloomberg article cited sources that made it clear that it's at least 130,000 barrels. No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. 130 million barrels stuck on ships, circling the oceans endlessly with no ports to go to. The article went on to suggest that because the shadow fleet is unmonitored, it could be as high, are you ready, as 500 million barrels of oil stored on the ships with no ports of call to go to, right? They're just desperately looking for customers now. And the thing about the Russians is they have no storage. They're a just-in-time economy that is used to selling 5.1 million barrels of oil a day. So they've never built storage. They have no strategic reserve. That means, and by the way, let's not forget that refining capacity inside Russia is down by likely between 23 and 30% because of attacks on Russian refineries. That means they're going to have to start shutting down wells. They're going to have to start producing less because they have nowhere for the oil to go. They have no buyers. They have nowhere for it to go. Zelensky said when Viktor Orban accused the Ukrainians of threatening Hungary's energy infrastructure by hitting the Brotherhood pipeline, the Druzhba pipeline. When Hungary accused Ukraine of this, Zelensky said to him, "It is not our fault that the Hungarians, who have had 4 years of war, to make other arrangements rather than remain dependent on Russian oil. It is not our fault that they have chosen to continue to remain dependent on a nation who will soon have no energy infrastructure to be dependent on." Zelensky basically threatened to end Russian energy supplies to the world. And now that OPEC has made up all of the Russian production that has been lost to the world, and the price of oil keeps falling, there is simply no reason why the world can't do without Russian oil. Especially since maybe now we have the whole Venezuelan oil to add to the world economy. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. But today is a watershed day. North Korea is not a customer for oil. I mean, I don't know the number, Pistol Pete, but they consume so little oil. I mean, it does. Nobody in North Korea can afford a car. People are starving. They don't have food. They certainly don't have cars, and they don't have electricity most of the time. So North Korea doesn't factor into this equation. Now, no, nothing about Trump makes me happy. Let me be clear about that. I'm happy that Maduro's gone. I'm happy that Maduro being gone causes problems for the Russians. I'm happy about all of that. Yes, I am. I'm happy that the whole Maduro operation led to this North Sea confrontation between the U.S. and the Russians. I'm very happy about that because for years I have been insulted by these Russian propagandists, these paid trolls, these tools of the Kremlin, who are always telling me, Russia, mighty Russia, U.S. afraid of Russia, U.S. never fight Russia, U.S. never stand up to Russia. When the reality is the U.S. never even thinks of Russia. No American ever thinks about Russia. We do not give a fuck about Russia. Before the war in Ukraine, I never gave Russia a second thought unless I was reading Chekhov. Because I am a big Chekhov fan, I gotta tell you. My favorite play of all time is The Seagull by Anton Chekhov. Someday I'll tell you about the best performance of that show I ever saw. But nobody in America ever thinks about Russia. Who gives a fuck about Russia? So, for years, I've been insulted by these trolls. You've all seen the comments, and these are all paid propagandists. They're not even real people. And they talk such shit. And today, we saw a Russian submarine turn around and skedaddle in the face of U.S. naval power. It wasn't even naval power. It was the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard. And, of course, our UK partners, who are great. I mean, the RAF and the British have been tremendous in this whole conflict with Russia. So it's a watershed day. And it's important to remember that U.S. forces didn't just seize the Bella 1 off the coast of Scotland. They also seized the Sophia in the Caribbean, another Russian Shadow Fleet vessel. And then, get this, we saw a third Russian Shadow Fleet vessel off the coast of Venezuela today, which was flying no flag at all, right? It had no country affiliation flag flying. It raised its Russian flag finally, and then it changed its name. They painted over the name Hyperion and gave it a new name, as if that would change anything. So MS says, this is your perception. Why don't you go to Ukraine and see how it is there? You brave on TikTok. Would anyone like to respond to MS before we throw them out? Would anyone like to, on the subject of paid Russian trolls? Right, please. So just to be clear, my name is Peter Alexievich, and I live in Kyiv. I have been here for 3 years. I have been not as often as I would like. I have been to the front line. I have been with some of the bravest, most self-sacrificing people I have ever known, who suffer such great hardship at the front to defend this nation from the autocratic nightmare, the genocidal lunatic in the Kremlin and his orc hordes. I really do like to keep the focus on Ukraine, as everybody here knows that follows this channel. But when somebody says something as stupid as what this nitwit has said, I made fudge today. I mentioned I had some peanuts in my teeth before. I'm sorry about that. But I made fudge today. And I did eat some of it, but I didn't make that fudge for me. That fudge is on its way right now to territorial defense units that tonight will be out there in the cold with interceptor drones ready to defend this city from Russian terror. Okay, that's enough about me. Now, I've got very mixed feelings about the Venezuela misadventure. I am glad that Maduro is gone. I am grateful that today we saw the Russians scurry away from American naval power. Again, from the U.S. Coast Guard and our British partners. And with Trump destroying our alliances every day, I want to say to the Brits here how really grateful I am to everybody that remains committed to the transatlantic partnership while we try to fix our problems at home, because we have real problems at home. And the idea that our two peoples who have enjoyed a very special relationship are currently being so divided by this failure of our democracy is most unfortunate. It's a difficult time. It's a very difficult time. So, okay, a couple other things here. The Salyut aircraft plant in Moscow is burning. Russia's on fire, baby. Russia's on fire. In Pokrovsk, very interesting story. The Atesh partisan group is reporting that there is just a record number of requests for reassignment as commanders are trying to flee the front line in Pokrovsk as Russian morale sinks through the floor. Now, those same commanders are not being reassigned. Unless they can bribe their commanders, right? Otherwise, they're being threatened. They're being threatened with their career futures being destroyed. They're being threatened with being sent on suicidal assaults with their men. They're being threatened in every way to report nothing but good news, advances, and a stable front line. This kind of coercion, this notion where high command has to threaten, cajole, and force compliance, persecute commanders in the field, rather than champion them, rather than support them, is a recipe for disaster and potentially mutiny. Now, we are not at that place yet, but I'll tell you something. The weather report for next week is fucking awful. There is an Arctic, what do they call it? Like an Arctic blast and a vortex, right? An Arctic vortex that is about to descend on the front that will drive the temperature down to like minus 15 Celsius, 3 degrees centigrade. Polar vortex, Lars. Thank you very much. That's exactly the words that I was looking for. That is going to make You're going to have frostbite. You're going to have, it's not going to be a good situation. So that is coming. Now, all the Russian progress in Pokrovsk seems to have stopped. The Abrams have shown up, and the Abrams are being used like giant snipers. We know that the railroad tracks bisect the city of Pokrovsk, right? And the Russians are all south of the railroad tracks now, and the Ukrainians are all north of the railroad tracks. The Ukrainians appear to have cleared out all the pockets of Russians north of the railroad tracks and pushed them back south of the railroad tracks. Now they've brought in the Abrams, where's my Aussies? There's Paul. I know Scully is here. They've brought the Australian Abrams in, and they're sitting north of the railroad tracks, and they're like snipers. Oh, there's a Russian position. And the Russians, of course, are hiding in Ukrainian buildings. So the tanks then crash those buildings, destroy them, crash them down on top of the Russians that are in them. And the Ukrainians are just picking off Russian positions south of the railroad tracks, making it impossible for the Russians to advance. Infiltration groups can't cross the open area of the railroad tracks because Ukrainian drones spot them from the sky and eliminate them. Pokrovsk has not fallen, regardless of what the Russians claim. Some incredible footage has emerged from Pokrovsk today. We see the Ukrainian drones picking off Russian soldiers. And then we see the Russian soldiers that survived the attack stealing, robbing the wounded, and leaving them behind to die. That is the state of the Russian army. A bunch of carrion birds picking at the bones of their own dead. In the one video, you very clearly see a wounded Russian soldier rocking back and forth in agony as he tries to keep his organs in their place. And another Russian soldier without a helmet come up to him and take his helmet and run away. It is a culture of predatory scavengers. And we're seeing it writ large. Probably the funniest thing that I have heard in a long time was said today by Ramzan Kadyrov, the Chechen strongman, right? Ramzan Kadyrov said, if I am given the order, Zelensky and his henchmen will be captured and taken to Grozny faster than Maduro was. Now, this is so funny to me because the order was given many times and the Russians have completely failed to execute on it. I mean, the whole Maduro exfiltration is a shining example of the Russian failure to do the same thing 4 years ago. They failed 4 years ago to take Kyiv in 3 days. The American military took Maduro in 3 hours. That's how you do a 3-hour special military operation, Russia. Pay attention. Maybe you'll fucking learn something. It was reported today. Now, yesterday, I talked about the bad. Pardon me. Yesterday, I talked about the bad news. The bad news is that the Russians are now producing 400 Shaheds a day. 400 Shaheds a day. The good news today is that the Ukrainians are producing 1,500 Shahed interceptor drones a day. It's almost a 4-to-1 ratio. It's almost a 4-to-1 ratio. 1,500 interceptors a day. And like I said, that fudge that I sent out with Dragon tonight is going to 2 of these drone interceptor teams. So, and these are brand new teams. They were just formed, and they're doing a hell of a job. Russia, of course, never keeps its word. Remember that Azerbaijani Airlines flight that the Russians shot down last year, and that Putin actually apologized for and took the blame for? Well, not anymore. The Azeri Times is reporting today that the Russian Investigative Committee has found that it was a weather-related failure of the pilot, and Russia bears no responsibility for the failure of that flight. That has pissed the Azeris off to no end. So Russia is now denying that it shot that plane down, even though we know it did. Okay, that's it for me. That's the top line stuff. We'll go to Q&A now. But before we do, let me take a moment and thank the sponsor of tonight's live, our beloved, our dear and wonderful Marilyn Fuller. Marilyn has been a supporter of this channel since very early on. I mean, like from the beginning. And I didn't see her come in. I don't know if she is here or if she'll see this on the YouTube. But Marilyn, thank you. Thank you for everything. Let me also thank Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, and of course, the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Feisty, Maddie, Roy Daniels, and Travis. Okay. So questions, comments, points of observation. There wasn't any severe weather that day. I don't know what the weather in Grozny was like that day. I can't say. Grozny, right? Wasn't that the destination of that plane? It was Baku to Grozny. If I'm not mistaken, that's right. But I might be wrong about that. I don't know what the weather was like that day. I can't say. But that is what they're blaming it on. How many Shadow Fleet ships are still sailing around? That's part of the problem, Scully. We don't really know. But at this juncture, there are 600 sanctioned Shadow Fleet vessels. Some estimates put the number as high as 1,000. So there's at least 600 out there. Did I take my blood pressure meds today? I did, Mike Kelly. Thank you. Kherson continues to be a nightmare of human safari. The Russians, because they are so close, they're just across the Dnipro. So they're only 2 kilometers from downtown Kherson City. They are using Kherson as a training ground for drone operators, and the drone operators are hunting the civilians of Kherson for practice, all of which are war crimes. How many years has Russia been trying to take Pokrovsk? Bob, they've been trying to take Pokrovsk since Avdiivka fell. And Avdiivka fell in February of 2024, right? Yeah, 2024. So about 21 months. In 21 months, they have failed to go 40 kilometers. And at the cost of tens of thousands of lives. I mean, the whole thing is such a dramatic failure. It is unbelievable to me that the Russian propagandists can say with a straight face, Russia is winning. In what world is losing 1.2 million men, controlling 54% less territory now than you did in March of 2022? In what world is that winning? In what world is it winning when you go from large armored column assaults with dozens of tanks and BMPs to sending your men in on motorcycles or e-bikes, motorcycles, and horses. What world is that winning? How deluded must you be to think that you are winning when you are climbing over a mountain of your own dead to make the next 100 meters? It's insanity. So is Russia on its way to the tanker? Russia appears to have turned tail and run from the tanker. They've abandoned it to the American forces and our allied forces there. Doesn't the Shadow Fleet ships have any papers? So, Ashy, it depends. The Fitberg, which the Swedes have recently seized, none of its paperwork was right. It didn't line up. It didn't make sense. And so the Swedes seized the tanker. That was the pretext for taking the tanker into custody, if you will. That's the wrong word, but let's use that word for right now. Yvonne says the Russian railway system is collapsing in debt. You are not wrong. Russian Railways is Russia's largest employer with 700,000 employees. Back in September, they started forcing the non-essential staff and office staff to take unpaid days off. So you're required to basically to work 4 days a week and only get paid for 4 days a week. If you're not like an engineer or a loader or maintenance, if you don't have to be there, your salary dropped by 20%. That didn't work. And so they put a hiring freeze in place, which means none of the job openings are being filled. And then they went to layoffs. They laid off, I forget how many people. I mean, it wasn't a big number compared to 700,000. But they're in trouble. Yeah. Do you know Ben from Kherson? Ben is not from Kherson. Ben is an American in Kherson. And yes, I know Ben. Well, there's not much of the Black Sea Fleet that's worth hitting anymore, Drew. Most of the Black Sea Fleet has been promoted to Coral Reef Starter Kit. Ukrainian troops are still on Russian soil and cannot be removed. You are not wrong, Debbie, in Tetkino. Right? What is it now? They've been there since August 6th, 2024. So August 6th, 2025 is 1 year. August, September, October, November, December, January. Yesterday was 1 year, 5 months, and today is 1 day that Ukrainian forces have been going to bed, waking up in control of Russian territory. You are right. That is Kursk would stay, and that's where they are. I'm with Drew. If you're an American, call your congressmen and reps. Congress is finally standing up to Trump. He vetoed 2 pieces of legislation, which it appears Congress is going to override his veto. Thank God. It's about time. And then there's the question of the ACA vote. And it looks like Congress is going to take that on as well. And override Mike Johnson's blockage of his absolute congressional legislative malpractice in promising a vote on that if we reopen the government and then refusing to have the vote. So it does appear that that's going to happen soon too. Will the ship seizures damage Putin and Trump relations? God, I hope so. Night, Birdie. Then it's time to sink the Caspian Sea Fleet. Well, they've been doing that, right? We've seen 3 tankers now sunk in the Caspian. We believe 2 of them, we believe 1 of them was struck by flamingos. From outside, I'm seeing a Russian agent destroying the NATO alliance and maybe forcing a crisis. No, you're absolutely right, James. That's exactly what Donald Trump is and what he's doing. Lost influence in Syria, Venezuela, and about to lose Iran. Also, Wagner losing influence in Africa. Stuzzy, you're right. And these are all dominoes to watch. Iran may well be the next domino to fall in Russia's sphere of influence. Elise Stefanik said that Mike Johnson does not have the votes to remain Speaker of the House. If someone were to challenge him, it is likely he would not have the votes to stay Speaker. Project 2025 mentioned Venezuela 18 times. Interesting. I wouldn't say that Iran is in the grip of revolution, but they are certainly discombobulated. Was the substation in Crimea recent? I'm not sure, Drew. I mean, substations are being hit every day. I was listening to one energy analyst just talk about where the Ukrainians are hitting substations and relay stations and stuff. And it was a very interesting analysis. And if I understood him correctly, what he believes the Ukrainians are doing is they are hitting these key nodes of substations, distribution stations, and something else he called them, that force the Russians to divert power to other segments of the grid. And he believes that if this pattern continues, Ukraine could be in a position that by just hitting a few particular nodes on the grid, they could take the entire grid down. It appears that there is a structured, organized methodology to the strikes that are happening against the Russian grid. And we could see the whole of Western Russia, from Murmansk all the way out to Samara, blacked out with precision strikes on the right nodes in the grid. Now, I'm no electrician, I'm no electrical engineer, but this guy is. And his analysis seemed accurate. Right, Paul? If you hit a transformer in a substation, boom, baby, boom. It's my understanding that that's because those are filled with some kind of an insulating fluid that is flammable. And so if you break that transformer and that insulating fluid is released, it's its own mineral oil. Is it basically mineral oil? Right, which is flammable. Oh, Arna knows about this shit, and he's confirming that. Yeah, that's my understanding. Hey, Rocco. Okay. It's a little bit past 1 a.m. here, guys, so I'm going to call it a night. Again, to the gorgeous Marilyn Fuller, thank you so much for sponsoring tonight's live. Thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group. To all the Patreon folks, guys, nobody has joined the Patreon in over a month, and a number of people have left it. If anybody out there who's been following this channel, who appreciates what we do here, could join the Patreon, it would be deeply, deeply appreciated. So maybe consider joining the Patreon or sponsoring a live. PayPal is in the description. So if anybody out there can help support this channel, that would be great. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow. Take care.